you, Coach. And thanks to all of you for jumping on and using this time to grow. You know, this is not how we would have imagined spending March 31st. None of us would have imagined this. And yet we find us in this place that this is life, and these are its terms. Life has happened. Corona crisis, quarantine, shelter in place, Zoom, Google Classroom. This is life, and these are its terms. But I'm proud of you all for the way that you've accepted the invitation in the midst of that to continue to grow, to continue to serve and to learn new ways to serve your athletes. I want you to know that coaches are my heroes, that you all, that when you spend day after day after day giving of the best of you in service of the next generation, I don't know that there's a higher calling. And I'm so proud of you all, and I'm proud to serve you. I'm the founder and CEO of Two Words Character Development. And real simply put, we're a company that exists to help coaches and athletes connect the dots between sports and life. That what we do every single day is we wake up and ask the question, how can we help coaches help athletes? And we do that really in two primary ways. One is through speaking, and obviously in this time, we've switched to doing virtual locker room talks, but I have the great privilege to speak to athletes and to coaches across the country. Any given day, you can find myself with the privilege of speaking to athletes and coaches and helping them connect those dots. And then the second way that we do that is through our character development curriculum. And what we've done since 2017 has provided a done-for-you character development curriculum. It's video-based and an online platform. And the reason that we've done that is because we understand that coaches want to have a culture of character. They want to coach beyond the game. We also understand that there's just 1,000 different hats that coaches wear. That you're bus drivers and you're play callers and you're surrogate fathers, and you are so many different things that sometimes having an intentional game plan just is beyond what you have time for. And so that's what we do, is we help coaches do that. And one of the things that we'll provide for each of you at the end of this time is 6 weeks of curriculum, 6 weeks of video and workbooks. It's all online that you can use during this time to connect with your athletes to help them grow. You know, at the end of the day, we believe that better people make better players. And when you grow young men through the game of football, then they're going to be better football players. And we believe that because we see that the foundation of character, and it's one of the reasons we're talking about building pillars of a culture of character, that this foundation, if it's not strong enough to hold the weight of a young man's talent, well, then that young man is going to be crushed by the weight of his talent. You look at ESPN's 30 for 30, and you see over and over and over again somebody that had once in a generation talent, but no character to hold it up. And what happens is that in the midst of that, well, then their talent crushes them because they don't have that character to hold. And so as coaches, we want to build a culture of character. We want to be about intentionally coaching and intentionally training the character traits that are going to help them be successful throughout the game of life, not just in the game of football. We coach how to pass or block or run or catch or all these things, and we're intentional with those. We would never think that, we can just passively teach how to read a defense, and that they can just be around us and then they'll learn how to read a defense. No, we intentionally spend time. We watch film and we coach them up and we ask questions and we challenge them. We give them a drill. We walk through that intentionally. Well, in the same way, we have to be intentional about building character in these young men. Young men are not made by accident. They have to be made intentionally. And so today, that's what I want to talk about and hear it as an encouragement to you all for what you are doing. So today, let's talk about the 8 pillars of a culture of character. One of the things that I want to use as a way to understand the importance of this is what I call the wheel of impact. And you see on this wheel 8 pillars, 8 things that I think are 8 areas of impact that make a difference, that build a firm foundation. You see, if you're looking at the top left, we'll call that quadrant 1, and you see personal health, purpose, personal code, servant leadership, growth mindset, grit, work ethic, and goals. That if you were to ask me, hey, Matt, what are the 8 areas that we need to make sure that we are hitting, that we need to make sure that we are intentional about, the same way that we're intentional about our game plan for Friday night, these are it. But what I want you to see is that if we are not balanced in this, we are going to end up in a wonky spot. You look at that first quadrant, and you see this is a program that really emphasizes growth mindset and personal health. They're in the body shop getting big and swole. There's some dudes, they got guys squatting 500 pounds left and right. They have guys that believe that there's more for tomorrow than there is for today. But you look and you see that purpose, well, they're doing all this, but they're not a purposed people. That they're not a team or a program that has a very great sense of their goals or why what they're doing matters. They're just in the body shop getting big and hopeful about it, but they have no direction. What I want us to see is that an unbalanced program, the further and faster it goes, the more damage it will do. And what I want you to see is we start talking about these pillars, is that we have to be balanced, because when we're not balanced, just like a wheel, you can imagine if this is the wheel on your Ferrari, you win it big, you're coaching big, and you're driving a Ferrari up to the field house on Saturday morning to watch film after the game. If this is what your wheel looks like, it won't matter if you've got a 2020 Ferrari with all of the bells and whistles, and it can go 0 to 60 and all of this. If that's what your wheel looks like, the further and faster you go, the more damage you will do. I want to challenge us. If we have programs that are really, really focused on simply winning a football game, they're really, really focused on simply having talent, well, the further and faster our program goes, the more damage we're going to do. Because we don't raise men when we simply teach them to win games. That's not how you make a man. We raise men when we teach them to have integrity, to take the right action at the right time and to not fear the consequence of doing so. We raise men when we teach them to be humble warriors, to not use their talents and abilities and to exploit them for their own gain, but instead we teach them to deploy them for the good of those around them. When we teach them how to have work ethic, how to bounce back and have a sense of grit, and when we teach that as a whole, well, then our program can go further, faster. And you see, as we move across these wheels of impact, to go from an unbalanced program to a balanced program. I want to challenge us to understand this idea. A balanced program will go further, faster than a bigger one. We get all focused on simply being the strongest, simply winning, simply having the best culture statements on our wall. We get so focused on one thing, we become unbalanced. An unbalanced wheel doesn't go very far, very fast. In fact, the faster and further it goes, the more damage it will do. And so from the very beginning, as we begin to talk about this, I want to challenge us to ask the question, do you have a balanced program? As you look, it doesn't have to be the biggest. A small balanced wheel goes further faster than a big unbalanced wheel. You have a balanced program, or are you over-focused on one area or another? All right, so if we can catch this idea, we're thinking like executive summary, a balanced program goes further, faster, right? That's the big idea here. And as we begin to go, okay, am I balanced? We have to ask the question, what am I balanced on? For me, these 8 things, these are it. And this is the very foundation that we need to grow in our young men as we build them up. But you might have a different pillar, and that's okay. I don't want you to get caught up in the fact that I call it purpose and you call it something else, right? You can erase these, right? I'm going to send you a PDF of all of this, and you can mark it out and you can put your own term in there. But I want you to catch that the big idea is that a balanced program will go further faster. And as we begin to set out what our 8 pillars are, what our core values are, I want us to think about them in these 3 terms: standard, affirmation, communication. That, again, as we think about what the 8 pillars are, whatever they are for you, I want you to think about, how do I define these terms? What is the standard? Because if I use the term grit, and I define it one way, but you define it another way, but we both think we're talking about the same thing, but then we do something different, we're going to be ships passing in the night. The same thing's going to be true for your kids. That you can't assume that they know what you mean by a certain term or by a certain core value or standard. Instead, we've got to define the standard in such a way that it becomes embodied in everything that we do. So let's take, for example, we say that a standard, a core value for us is that servant leadership, or that purpose, that we are going to play for, live for, believe in something bigger than me, myself, and I. That's the standard, right? Well, then that standard has to be affirmed everywhere we go. That if we're going to say, I live for, play for, believe in something bigger than self, then every chance that we get to affirm that in a kid, we've got to do it so that they know that what they're doing is lining up with our standards. So when you've got a kid, Johnny, and he's a C for credit, D for degree kind of kid, when he buys into this, I've got to play for, live for, study for something bigger than self, and he busts his butt in tutorials, he busts his butt in algebra, and he takes that grade from a C minus to a C plus, from a maybe he's going to be passing, maybe he's not come 6 weeks, to now he's got a B minus, and he's become more dependable. He's grown himself, and he's sacrificed to do that. Then when we get his grade reports, we stand Johnny up in front of the entire team and we affirm him and we tell him, listen, Johnny has put himself second, his teammates first, and he's done it in the classroom. Because let's be honest, we didn't always know if we could count on Johnny to have the grades to be a dependable player. But he busted his butt. He lived for, studied for something bigger than himself, for team. And now we can count on him, and we're going to celebrate him for that. I want you to remember this. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And when we affirm and reward the standards and call it out of our program, when we reward that, it's going to get repeated. But when we reward simply winning, guess what? That's what's going to get repeated. The actions that shortcut to winning. But when we reward and we affirm those foundations, those core values, that character, that's what gets repeated. Our standard has to be deep. We don't have to communicate it in a deep way, but it's got to have a serious meaning. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to have to be able to define it very clearly so that our students know what they're supposed to live up to. And we affirm it again and again and again, because what gets rewarded gets repeated. And then we find ways to communicate it that is contextual to our kids. Too many people, I know culture is a buzzword right now, and too many people think that culture is a catchy hashtag or cool waterboy graphics on the walls of the locker room or things like that. Culture standards are not the communication. That's just the fun part. That's just the way that we get to get some buy-in around what we're doing. One of my favorite ways to communicate this is to think about the value of encouragement, the value of celebrating others, and to go, how do we celebrate others? How do we make that a part of who we are? Right. Well, I love wrestling. I'm talking old school WWF before they sold out, went WWE and all of that. Old school. I love Hulk Hogan, right? The Macho Man, Randy Savage, ooh yeah, right? I mean, I love all of that, and more than any of them, right? I love the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, right? For me, encouraging people matters so much. And I love the nature boy. That's contextual to me. So what do? Man, when somebody does something well, I give them 2 claps and a Ric Flair. Woo! And it's a simple way to communicate that I see you living up to our standards. And it matters to me. And it becomes something that when I'm with teams, man, they get fired up to give somebody 2 claps and a Ric Flair. Right? For you, it might not be that. For your kids, it might be, your team mascot. Way out west in Seminole, Texas, they're the Indians. And they talk about what it means to be a tribe. Their standards are communicated through the acronym of TRIBE. T for trust, respect, integrity, belief, and effort. They say if you want to be a part of our tribe, if you want to be a part of this community, you have to live up to the standard of trust, respect, integrity, belief, and effort, right? And so, again, the communication of tribe, well, that doesn't mean anything if there's no meat to the standard, right? And the standard is not going to be lived up to if we're not affirming it. We can affirm it through our communication. You see, it becomes a cycle, right? So again, as we start to think through this, our core values, the pillars, we need a balanced program. We need a balance between having that standard, affirming, and communicating. So if we can kind of catch that, then really we can catch everything that we're going to talk about for the rest of this time. So, and I'll throw this out there. If you say, look, Mac, I'm not creative when it comes to communication, that's fine. Let your athletes decide. Let them buy in and have some ownership on what it means to be a part of the program, how to define your values, your standard, how to communicate it, right? Let them decide. Because I promise you, when they take ownership in it, when it's them that came up with 2 claps and a Ric Flair, when it's them that came up with, hey, we're dudes, and this is what it means to be a dude, right? When they come up with it, you better believe they're going to live up to it, right? You treat them like owners, they act like owners. You treat them like employees, they're going to act like employees, right? So if you're not creative in that way, let them take the ownership of coming up with it. So with that said, I want to talk about these 8 areas of impact, these 8 pillars. Again, for me, these are the foundation of it all. It's the foundation of our curriculum. It's the foundation of what we teach. But what I hope that you'll see is that even if you might use a term differently, that you would see how under these umbrellas, whatever ism you use could fit here. And even more importantly, that you would see that whatever ism you use in each of these 8 areas, if your program is not balanced, you won't go very far, very fast. So let's dive in. So the first pillar, characters, we call purpose, right? And you see how I've gone through and I have defined this in multiple sentences, but I've also shortened it into that one first sentence, and it's going to be highlighted. And so what I want you to think about is like a drop-down menu. The one word, purpose. The next drop-down is, I live for something greater than me, myself, and I. If I talk about purpose, well, I can define it in that one sentence. But I also can go down deeper and say, my conviction is greater than the sacrifices I make, the critics I encounter, and the trials I face. I am devoted to my purpose and set aside my ego to better serve my team. Now, do I expect a sophomore offensive lineman to learn this? Well, actually, probably so, because offensive linemen are pretty quick. But the defensive lineman, probably not. The defensive lineman is going to remember purpose, right? But what I want them to grab in that is to go, look, when I think purpose, I think I've got to live for something greater than me, myself, and I. And so that means everywhere I go in this program, we're talking about we over me. We're talking about I am second. We're talking about sacrificing for the good of the team. We're talking about pushing ourselves for the betterment of those around us, that I will deploy the best of me for the betterment of you. You see, that is something that has to be taught, because it is countercultural. It's an upside down way of thinking and living. Too many people think that sports is about getting my stats, my recruiting, my recognition. but I can't think of very many coaches that want a team that is full of players that live for me, myself, and I. That many coaches that want athletes that are going to play great so long as they're going to get the playing time they think they deserve. Nobody wants that player, right? We want the guy that is going to say, I play for team, for something bigger than me, myself, and I. And I would rather lose for me and win for the team than win for me and lose for the team. You see, that's purpose. What I want you to see is when we teach players to do that in the game of football, you know where that carries on to? The game of life. Because one day these guys are going to be husbands, as butt ugly as they are. They're going to convince some cute young girl to marry them, and then they're going to have the opportunity to become a father. And they're going to have to ask the question, do I live for me, myself, and I? Am I going to be selfish, right? I had to answer that question this morning, right? When we got a four-month-old, right? He's crying all night long, not sleeping, right? And then, 6:30 rolls around. I finally fell asleep. And then what happens? My 2-year-old comes in, and he's ready to go. Left lane, hammer down, full tilt boogie, right? He wants some cereal, and then he wants some oatmeal, and then he wants a protein shake. Like he's a bottomless pit. And I had to make the choice in that moment. See, if I'm living for me, I'm rolling over. And I'm waiting for my wife to get so frustrated that she storms off and takes care of him. But if I live for something bigger than me, myself, and I, you know what? I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to die to self, and I'm going to go do it. I'm going to tell you, I got reps at dying to self that allow me to be and to work towards becoming a great husband because I got reps in the game of football learning to play for something bigger than myself. I want you to see that these things that we teach in the game of football will last the rest of their life. That's why it's so important that we teach about more than just the X's and O's. And so this first foundational piece is purpose. I don't know how you communicate it. I don't know how you affirm it, right? But the standard is that we live for something greater than self. That the conviction, the thing that gets you up at 4 a.m, is greater than the sacrifices that you make, the critics that you encounter, and the trials that you face, right? So that's number one, purpose. Number two is this sense of personal code, that who I am is more important than what I do. I hold myself accountable to and live by a code that doesn't change based on the forces of culture around me. How many people, whenever the winds of life blow and waves begin to crash in, how many people change their tune because it got harder than they thought it would be? How many people, all of a sudden, when things get difficult, go, you know what? Maybe I bit off a little bit more than I should have, more than I could chew, right? They let the forces of culture around them determine who they are and what they do. You see, what we teach in the game of football, something we need in the game of life, that we live by a code, that there is something that does not change no matter how difficult it is. We don't teach our guys to work hard just when they're winning. We teach them to work hard when it's the fourth quarter and there's 2 minutes left and they're down by 20 and they can't come back, or they're down by 60. You know they can't come back, but we teach them to work hard and to give their best. We coach those last 2 minutes like they're the first 2 minutes. Why? Because I'm not accountable to a scoreboard. I'm accountable to a code. I'm accountable to something deeper, to my purpose, right? What we've got to teach these young men is to not live in a tit-for-tat kind of way. So long as what I get is worth it, then I'll do it. No, I do it because I said I would, because I'm accountable to something bigger than a scoreboard, right? And so this code, this sense of things that do not change regardless of the circumstances around. We talk a lot, Stephen Covey says it, we quote him all the time, that we are a product of our choices, not our circumstances. That who I am is determined by the choices I make. The choices I make determined by who I am. And so this sense of code, well, that's something that we need to hold ourselves and our players accountable to. This need to be a part of our program. Number three, Talk about the pillars of a culture of character. We've got purpose, personal code. Number 3 is servant leadership, that I joyfully serve those around me. I wonder if that's the attitude of your coaching staff. Can we put our players aside for a minute? Talk about our coaching staff. Do we joyfully serve our athletes? I joyfully do the laundry of a freshman football player. I joyfully stay after we've gotten back from the game 2 hours waiting for a parent to show up. I joyfully serve those kids on my team, not just the ones that make me look like a good coach, but the ones that I've got to go the extra mile for just to make sure that these jokers don't forget their cleats. Do you intentionally look for ways to bring the best of you to every encounter, relationship, and challenge or goal, not just for your own growth or good, but for the good of others? Leadership is not a title I selfishly pursue. It's an act of service I intentionally take. You see, if we as coaches, if we exploit the position of leadership for our own gain, guess what our seniors will do? They will exploit their position as seniors on the freshmen and make the freshmen work for them. But when we as coaches joyfully serve, we intentionally look for ways to serve those around us, guess what our seniors are going to do? They're going to say, you know what, now that I've become a senior, I've not reached the top where everybody else has to serve me. I've now reached the bottom, and now I get to serve even more people. And so rather than the senior becoming the one who gets all of the privilege, the senior becomes the one who gets the honor of serving. And we can teach them to serve in a locker room, then we can teach them to serve in the hallway. And now all of a sudden, these athletes who have an influence greater than any other student on campus, they're deploying that influence, not for their own gain, but for the good of the kid that's in the corner that sits by himself every day because somebody somewhere in his high school career said that he stunk and that he, I don't know, was a cotton-headed ninny muffin or whatever, and now he didn't have any friends. And now you have senior football players who go, you know what, I'm going to go intentionally look for a way to bring the best of me to that kid that's considering suicide, but nobody knows it because nobody talks to him. And that senior football player goes and starts hanging out with that kid. He knows his name. He welcomes him into his table. Or they go and they start hanging out with the special needs students. And they go, you know, we're not going to look down on them because they're different. We're going to see the best in them. And we're going to celebrate them. We're going to let them be a team manager. They welcome them in. It changes the culture of a campus. And if you as a coach, you want to have teachers that are on your side, not against you, then raise up football players that are servant leaders, that make the campus better. The teachers go, you know what? These coaches are making these boys better. These boys are making our campus better. We need to support them. If I only got to pick one pillar, one thing that I'm going to build a program on, it's this right here. It's servant leadership. Because I know if we do that, then I know that my players, they're gonna serve one another in the weight room by working hard. They're gonna serve one another on the weekend by making sure they're not making dumb, boneheaded decisions when coach isn't there to tell them whether to go right or left. I know that they're not gonna use their talent or position to simply exploit for their own gain, but instead they're gonna deploy it in the good of others. If I got one, I'm picking this. But thankfully, we don't have to just pick one. We can make this a part of our DNA, that we would joyfully serve those around us. We move on. The next is personal health. And this one is as important for our athletes as it is for us. Right? That we choose to invest in my health because I understand the healthier I am, the better I can serve others. That when we as coaches take care of ourselves, then that challenges athletes to take care of themselves. And watch what happens. I remember my freshman year of high school, got big hopes, big dreams, and my coach says, I'm going to be in the weight room at 7 a.m. every day before school. If you want to get better, You come join me. You know what happened? I showed up at 7 a.m. every day. Why? Because coach told me to be there. Coach was there pushing himself, making himself better. I looked at coach and said, I could never be as strong, as big as coach is, but I'm going to darn sure try. You know what happened? As I pushed myself to be like coach, I became one of the strongest players on the team. I got better for my team. You see, when we take care of ourselves, we can serve our kids better, longer. We can go longer, do more, right? The other thing that happens when we take care of ourselves, it teaches our kids that we don't have to be ashamed of our struggles. We don't have to be ashamed when we need help. That when we don't have to be ashamed of admitting, you know what? I haven't been taking care of my health. I haven't been taking care of my emotional state. Make no mistake, man, these kids are struggling. The pressures, the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the worry, all of that, those things are at sky-high levels. And so when we show our athletes that we're not ashamed of our struggles, that we're not ashamed to take time to take care of self, that it's not selfish to take care of yourself so that you can better serve others, it shows them that it's okay to do the same. I was talking with one of the sports psychologists for the University of Alabama, and was on his podcast, and we were talking, and one of the things that he mentioned was that there was a young man, as an offensive lineman, that had gotten to a point where he was a harm to himself mentally. But he was afraid to say anything because he was afraid that he would lose his position on the depth chart. And so the psychologist talked to Coach Saban, and what he said was that Coach Saban said, I'm going to treat this no differently than a sprained ankle. And so you tell me the same way the athletic trainer would tell me how many weeks off he needs to re-heal for his ankle. Well, then we're going to treat this the same. You tell me how many weeks he needs to recover. And in so treating the mental health, and this kid's personal health, mentally, emotionally, the same as he did physically, then what happened was it gave that kid permission to take care of himself. And in taking care of himself, what happened was that he could better serve his teammates, right? I'm going to challenge you. Make personal health a foundational part of this, because the healthier you are, the better you're going to be able to serve people. All right, we're about halfway there. We're going to blow through these last few goals, right? Set goals that are worthy of the talents that have been placed in you and are yours to steward. That I work towards goals that are worthy of my talents. I don't set logo goals and then celebrate when I overcome them. Not at all. I set high goals. Why? Because I want those goals to be worthy of who I am. We communicate to our kids, listen, these big goals, they seem unreachable, but you have it in you. What happens is you speak belief into those kids. You teach them that they are capable. They got to put in the work. They're going to have to learn. They're going to have to grow. But if they will reach goals that help them better serve their team, their campus, and their community. Don't just set the general. Everybody wants to be state champion. Okay? Everybody wants. That's why we play the game. Don't just set goals that are generic. Set goals that are specific to your kids. And throughout the year, keep up with where you're at. And when you need to adjust them, adjust them. We get the idea in the body shop. When I reach a new PR, 6-week cycles over and I hit a new PR, guess what? That becomes my working set. Do the same thing with your goals throughout the year. Make sure the goals are worthy of the talents that are yours to steward. Next, we have just a couple more. Next is grit. We teach our athletes to persevere regardless of the trials, challenges, or obstacles that are in front of you. I will not let hard work, hard days, hard choices, or hard truths keep me from living into the purposes for which I am working towards. Instead, I will embrace discipline and purpose them for my growth. Friends, I want you to understand, kids can be quick to quit because that's what a lot of people teach them to do. Things aren't going well at your school, just transfer to another one. You don't like coach, get mom or dad to complain and to get a new coach. The grass is always greener on the other side. What the world will tell them. we get to teach them the importance of grit, of persevering regardless of how difficult it is, of making a commitment that counts and counting the cost of the commitment and keeping it even when the motivation is low and the cost is high. You see, when we teach them this, when we teach them that no matter what life brings, that they can purpose that for their own growth. That means we got to work hard. We got to do hard things. That's what successful people do. They do hard things. So we got to make sure that we're teaching that. Because if we only teach them how to be successful when it's easy, when we're playing competition that they smoke, they don't ever develop the skill sets that they need. All right, we got just two more. Growth mindset. I seek the growth that is available to me. I have not arrived, rather I am arriving. I believe there is more for me tomorrow than there was today, and I'm willing to work for it. I embrace the process of growth, even when that process is slower than expected. That we teach these young men, we teach our athletes that there is more tomorrow, that you can get where you want to go, but you won't get there because you're entitled. You will get there because you will do the work. And you've got to seek it out. And that means you've got to leverage every day, every hour, every opportunity. That it's not, that growth isn't going to happen just because you woke up today, but it's going to happen because you faithfully do the work day after day after day. And we have to communicate to them that the process will be slower than we think that it's going to be, that it's going to take longer than we think it ought to take. But that's because the goals we've set are worthy of that process. We communicate to them. We don't have a kind of a defeatist mindset. Like, well, this is just what we got. I'm sorry, guys. Administration doesn't support us more than this. We don't have that negative talk. But instead we talk, you know what? We don't have what they have. But what we do have is heart. What we do have is a willingness to work. We're going to take what we do have and we're going to work it so that we can use it to grow. This mindset, this way of thinking about what's in front of you is going to come top down. That as the head coach goes, everyone else is going to go. And so if you find yourself in that spot, understand the words you use, how you talk about situations really, really matter, right? Because what your coaches and your athletes hear is going to take root in their hearts. And what takes root in their hearts is going to come to life in their hands and in their actions. So as you talk about these things, make sure you're speaking that we are in process. We are arriving. There is more. We've got to go do the work for it. And then finally, work ethic. That I will work harder today than I did yesterday to be better today than I was yesterday. I may be out-talented, but I will never be outworked. The work I do is not for me or my recognition, but to use my influence to serve those that have none. And I want you to see how all this comes back to that sense of purpose, that I work harder today, not just for my own gain, but to serve others. I wake up today and I will not go to sleep. I will not leave practice. I will not finish the workout. I will not put my head on the pillow until I am convinced that I can answer with integrity that I did work today to be better than I was yesterday. You see, it's an integrity issue. To be out-talented, that's a talent. I can't help it if the dude you're going up against is 6'13" and 290 pounds as a freshman. I can't help that. But I can help how hard I work as a result of it. And that work, when we do it for something bigger than a scoreboard, bigger than me, myself, and I, it pushes us to work even harder. You think about your kids. If you got kids, you get this, right? I will work my fingers to the bones. I will storm the gates of hell with a Super Soaker 9000 for my kids. There is nothing I will not work and do for them. Why? Because they mean that much to me. I'm not working because I want money. I'm not working because I need to get food. I'm working to provide for my family. See, it's a conviction. When we teach our athletes to work for something bigger than self, they work harder, right? That the goal is greater, that the reward of success is greater than the sacrifice required. We got to preach that again and again and again. So as we work through this, again, I want you to see, I'm going to kick back to the very beginning. I want you to see that a balanced program is going to go further, faster, that when you can take these areas of impact, these 8 areas, these pillars, however you describe them, you go, this is going to be the foundation of the work that we do. And we're going to make sure that throughout the year, throughout the semester, throughout the week, that we are balanced amongst these things. Every one of these, they will amplify the talent that your athletes have. I want to let you know, I saw a chat come up about some resources here. Here's a couple resources for you. twowords.tv/coaching school. If you go to that link, you'll find an audio version of a different time that I shared this presentation, as well as another presentation called Building Leaders for the Game, Through the Game, and Beyond the Game. There are a PDF handout of the notes for this lecture and for that one, and there'll be resources for you. A second resource I want to give you, it's not on this slide, but you can write it down, is twowords.tv/game plan 6. Game plan, the number 6. And if you go to that link, here's what you're going to find. You will find 6 weeks of our character development curriculum, the full video, the full workbook that is gender and sport neutral, and you will also find instructions on how to integrate those into Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, SportsU, any kind of online platform like that. And that 6 weeks of our curriculum that you can use with your athletes during this downtime. It's got a 7 to 10 minute video in which I communicate the character trait of the week, defined and described by 2 words. And then there's a workbook that has lessons for coaches, captains, athletes, and parents. For you as coaches, it'll give you 3 things to be on the lookout for that will help you coach beyond the game. And say, hey, as you see these things, call them out. They'll help you reinforce the character trait of the week. The captain's page is going to answer the question, in light of this lesson, what does a leader do? How do I act as a servant leader? The athlete's page is going to answer the question, in light of this lesson, how do I grow? How does character help me reach my goals? And then for your families, for your parents, you can obviously allow them to watch the video, and then it gives them a 1-page encouragement and 5 questions that they can talk about to keep the conversation going. And so now you're equipping mom and dad to have some dinner time conversations in the midst of this. Just know that every video has Spanish subtitles, and we also have the parents page available in Spanish. And so that's 6 weeks of that ought to get you into summer and be a resource for you during this time, that you can start putting this into practice, that you can take this mentality, this coach beyond the game philosophy, and you put it into practice even while you're away from your kids. And again, that resource is twowords.tv/game plan 6, the number 6, game plan 6. And Justin has put that in the chat. And so you can click on the chat and find that there. So with that, we've got 15 minutes or so. And so I'll open up to any questions, thoughts, or violent objections.
There was a question up here, working with inner city urban volleyball kids, how would you help develop that higher level personal code?
Yeah, so as we talk about this personal code of like who I am matters. I would come back to asking and having regular conversations about why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we working? Hey, I'm working hard, not just because I want to win the game, I'm working hard because I believe that you are worth my hard work, that we communicate the belief in them that they are worth it, and we encourage them to connect the dots and move beyond a tit for tat exchange. I do this, I get that. And then we begin to help them see that the idea of investing. So, you can look at some short-term practices, things like asking students to talk about, why do you play volleyball? What's the thing that makes you work really, really hard? Why do you do it? And then connecting that why back to the hard work. Maybe you have them write it down on a sheet of paper and they post it in their locker room. Or you answer a question, I play for. You make a banner, you put that on the locker room. I play for this. And so then you use that language even in your workouts. All right, hey, I play for conditioning. I play for, and that's the type of conditioning we're going to do. And so we're working really hard in the conditioning. And as you're talking about reps, it's rep number, I play for my mom. I play so that I can have a new future. I play for whatever. And we're connecting those dots. So there's some thoughts there. And then also, just as you dive into the curriculum, you'll see that there are questions in each lesson that help connect to that bigger purpose as you work through.
That's awesome. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? I think I speak for everyone. I just say, just wow. I mean, the presentation was powerful. This is one that you're going to have to watch back just to grab all that information. And of course, having the 6-week curriculum available to us is such a blessing, and we thank you for that for sure. Question just came in here. How do you approach the kids that are 2 feet in and make the sacrifice and complete the wheel, but still don't start or get that PT they want?
Yeah, so that's where you can, a friend of mine, Coach Randy Jackson, does a great job of some of these things. Each week at their game day breakfast, they give out awards, not just for Defensive Player of the Week, Offensive Player of the Week. They give player awards for Scout Team Player of the Week. They give player awards for I brought the juice. The energy award each week, and they give them the chain that they can hang up in their locker room, that week. That you find ways to communicate the value of the things that they are doing, the value that isn't just found on the field. And that may mean you have to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with the kid and go, look, man, I know that you're not getting the playing time that you want. And I understand that. And I know that it's hard. But I want you to see how what you are doing is making a difference. And if you can't communicate the value of what he's bringing to the table by his hard work, then how is that kid going to see the value? And so, if he sees you only valuing the players that are on the field, he's going to say, I'm only going to be valued if I'm on the field. But when he sees, look, we celebrate and we honor those scout team players, those guys that are doing the nuts and bolts things, the things that make Friday night possible, and you have a genuine value for it, and the team celebrates it, then he's going to be able to find some value in that. But the reality is, not everybody's going to get to play on Friday night. Like, we're not handing out participation trophies, right? Like, my kid gets a participation trophy, I'm going to break it in his face and tell him to go earn something. Right? Just because we're building a culture of character doesn't mean that we are building a culture of entitlement, right? But what we do want to do is we want to honor and we want to celebrate and value the work that they're doing that isn't on the field. So again, it's that picture of being balanced with what we value.
It was awesome. Anybody else? Truly awesome stuff. Coach, man, I appreciate you jumping on with us this morning, and like when we were communicating, I know how much of these you're probably doing, and just staying super busy with setting these things up. So I appreciate you so much for jumping on and giving us such a tremendous and powerful talk this morning. And like I said, it's going to be one that you're gonna have to watch back for sure. Here's another question that came in. How would you recommend how would you recommend to show value in your staff?
Wow. Man, great question. Yeah, I think just the fact that you're concerned about that speaks volumes. Every one of your staff, they're gonna receive encouragement and value differently. But here's some, and so knowing them and understanding what speaks to them will certainly help. But here's some thoughts. Using we language over I language. This is what we have done. Coach, how did you make that? How did you make that call? It's a tough call. How did you make that? Well, here's what we decided. So, whenever the spotlight comes to you, be intentional to be inclusive of celebrating and honoring and including your staff and the hard work that they do. That's one way. Whenever you get a chance to call out what they are doing well and to celebrate that to others is a great way to show that you value them. Understanding that if you got a staff that has family, understand that you got to get the work done, and coaches work crazy hours, but also, create some boundaries for them to be able to be with their family. Look, you don't have to worry. Every Sunday morning, you're going to be with your family, and your bride, your wives, your family can count on that. I'm not going to steal that from you. Giving them that time and honoring that is a way to communicate value to them. Another way to create value in them is to give them ownership. So when you have a young guy on your staff, have that conversation. Say, what would you do in this situation, right? And let them put themselves out there and take some ownership on it and have a conversation with them. One of my mentors, someone that I looked up to very, very well, we would have a conversation, and he would ask me, hey, what do you think we should do in this situation? And I would give him my opinion, and I would be really passionate about it. Like I didn't pull any punches. I was like, I think we need to do this, and if we don't do this, then that's wrong. And he gave me permission to be that honest and bold. And we would talk about it, and he would find himself in a situation where he'd say something like this. You know what, Mackey, you may be right, but I want to do it this way. And he would fully hear and have a genuine conversation or dialogue about it. But then at the end, if I didn't convince him, he would say, you may be right, but I want to do it this way anyways. And then once we did it, if I was right, he would come back and go, you know what, Mackey, that went about the way that you said it would. But I'm thankful that you gave 100% effort to my idea, even though your idea proves to be right. And then the flip side would happen, that when we would do the thing that he wanted and I didn't think it was right and I gave my best and it worked, I would have to come back and go, you know what, man, I never in 1,000 years thought that would work. But wow, you were right. And giving your staff permission to have that conversation, to have that ownership, to be bold with their opinion, but also to be committed to the team. That spoke volumes to me. That was 3 or 4 years ago. And I still remember that spoke volumes to me. That's another way. Finally, I just asked, hey, talk to them and ask them, hey, what is it that I can do that's going to help you be your best coach? And then take notes on that, do that, and then they're gonna feel valued. So there's some thoughts there.
Awesome. Looking to see just some people giving praise about the presentation, and I guess
thank you.
Some coaches here that you work with their programs, which is awesome.
Love it. Well, man, I'll again just kind of wrap some of this up. For this presentation, the audio and the PDF, and for another presentation similar to it, like you see on the screen, 2words.tv/coaching school. For 6 weeks of our character development curriculum, that's got the 7-10-minute video, the online workbook, and for instructions on how to integrate it into online learning platforms so you can start using it with your athletes today. Go to twwords.tv/gameplan6. It's the number 6, and Justin's put that in the links. You can also on Twitter look on my profile there, and you can find links to that. And then on this slide, you see all of my contact. That's my personal cell phone. That's my email address. And so if there's anything that I can do for you, virtual locker room talk with your athletes, any way that I can serve you or your program, don't hesitate to reach out. And just know that myself and our team at Two Words, we're here to serve you as coaches. And if there's anything we can do to do that, the only thing stopping us is you asking.
That's awesome. Really appreciate you coming in this morning again, just to not only spend the time with us, but to just share all that great knowledge with us, and then offer those tremendous resources for us as well as coaches and whoever else is interested is truly a blessing, and we thank you for that. And I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening in to Coach Mackey talk. And like I said, I think everybody's just kind of, we're just kind of blown away by the presentation, and it's, once again, thank you. Seriously, thank you.
No, you guys are welcome. Thank y'all for what y'all do, the ways that y'all are raising up the next generation. Y'all are my heroes. So keep up the great work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.